Arrogant millionaire humiliates poor family in a luxury mall. The next day, she discovers something that makes her deeply regret what she did. The sun had barely risen over Springdale when Samantha Parker entered her office at the top of the city's tallest skyscraper. Her high heels echoed on the floor as she walked determinedly to her desk. "Good morning, Ms. Parker," said her assistant Jennifer with a nervous smile. Samantha just nodded, keeping her eyes on the documents in her hands. "Coffee, black. Now," she ordered. Jennifer rushed to fulfill the request, while Samantha sat down in her chair, gazing out at the city stretching below her. At 40, she owned the largest real estate empire in Springdale, a feat she had clawed her way to achieve. The phone rang. It was Robert, her lawyer. "Samantha, we have the contract for the Oasis project. They've agreed to all our terms." A smile appeared on Samantha's lips. "Great. Prepare the papers. We'll sign them this afternoon." As she hung up the phone, an unwanted memory surfaced in her mind. Samantha, 8 years old, sitting on the floor of a tiny apartment, listening to her mother cry because she didn't have the rent money. The smell of mold and the feeling of hunger were so vivid that for a moment she could almost feel them again. Samantha shook her head, pushing the memory away. Those days were long gone. She had sworn she'd never be poor again, and she had kept that promise. Jennifer returned with the coffee. "Ms. Parker, the meeting with the team is scheduled for 10 a.m. Would you like me to prepare something?" "No," Samantha replied curtly. "I'll handle it myself." The team meeting was always a tense event. Samantha paced the conference room, her cold eyes scanning each face. "Thompson, your sales are below target. Explain yourself," she demanded. The man stammered, "Well, Ms. Parker, the market's been a bit slow and—" "Slow?" Samantha interrupted. "The market isn't slow, Thompson. You are. You have 1 week to double your sales, or you're out." The silence that followed was palpable. No one dared to look at Thompson, who seemed on the verge of passing out. "Anyone else have excuses for mediocre performance?" Samantha asked, glancing around the table. No one answered. "Good. Get back to work. I expect results." As the employees hurried out, Samantha noticed the fearful and resentful looks. It didn't matter. Fear was a powerful tool, and she wielded it expertly. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings, phone calls, and contracts. When she finally got home to her luxurious penthouse, Samantha poured herself a glass of expensive whiskey and walked out to the balcony. The city sparkled below her, a sea of lights and possibilities. All of it was hers. She had earned it. So why did she feel this emptiness in her chest? Samantha looked around the silent, pristine apartment. There were no photos on the walls, no sign of life beyond the expensive furniture and valuable artwork. It was exactly how she wanted it. No attachments, no distractions. But that night, as she prepared for bed, Samantha couldn't help but notice the deafening silence around her. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to feel a pang of loneliness. "Don't be ridiculous," she muttered to herself, pushing the feeling away. She had everything she'd ever wanted. What more could she possibly need? With that question lingering in her mind, Samantha turned off the lights and lay down, alone in her kingdom of success and solitude. The following Saturday, Samantha decided to visit the Oasis Mall, the most luxurious shopping center in Springdale. She didn't need anything in particular, but she enjoyed staying up to date with the latest fashion and design trends. Dressed in a designer outfit and high heels, Samantha walked through the mall as if it were her own property. In a way, it was. Her latest real estate project had financed much of the recent expansion of the Oasis Mall. As she passed by a children's clothing store, something caught her attention. A family was standing in front of the display window, gazing in admiration at the dresses on display. They weren't the kind of family that typically frequented the Oasis Mall. The father, a tired-looking man, wore a simple shirt and worn-out jeans. The mother, in a very plain outfit, held the hand of an older girl who appeared to be around 12. But it was the younger child that caught Samantha's eye. The little girl, who couldn't have been more than 8, had her nose practically pressed against the glass of the display window. Her eyes sparkled as she stared at a shiny pink princess dress. Samantha felt a stab of irritation. What was this family doing here? Clearly they couldn't afford anything in that store. Determined to express her opinion, Samantha approached the group. "Admiring something you can't have?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. The family turned, surprised by the interruption. The father was the first to speak. "Sorry, ma'am, we're not bothering anyone." Samantha laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Not directly, maybe, but people like you shouldn't be here. This isn't a place for those who can't afford to spend." The mother pulled the children closer, her eyes filling with tears of humiliation. "We just wanted to show the girls." "Show them what?" Samantha interrupted. "Things they'll never have? What kind of parents are you?" The older girl looked at Samantha with a mix of fear and anger. "Why are you being so mean?" Samantha turned to the girl, her eyes cold. "I'm not being mean, sweetie. I'm being realistic. Your family clearly doesn't belong here. Look at your clothes, look at your dad. Do you really think you can buy anything here?" The father stepped forward, placing himself between Samantha and his family. "Ma'am, please, we're just walking around. There's no need for this." But Samantha wasn't willing to stop. She continued, her voice growing louder, drawing the attention of other shoppers. "Walking around? This isn't a public park. It's a luxury establishment. People like you should stick to neighborhood malls where you belong." The scene was causing a commotion. Other people had stopped to watch, some with shocked expressions, others with obvious disapproval directed at Samantha. The Johnson family, embarrassed and hurt, began to walk away. The mother whispered to her husband, "Mark, let's go, please." Mark nodded, guiding his family away from the store, away from Samantha and the curious gazes of the other customers. Samantha watched them walk away, a satisfied smile on her face. She turned to resume her shopping, but something made her look back one last time. The younger girl had stopped and was looking over her shoulder, her eyes still fixed on the princess dress in the window. There was something in her gaze, a mix of longing and sadness that made Samantha pause for a moment. But she quickly brushed the feeling aside. "Ridiculous," she muttered to herself, turning and walking in the opposite direction. As Samantha continued her stroll through the mall, she couldn't shake a nagging feeling in the back of her mind. The image of that little girl staring at the dress stayed with her, no matter how much she tried to ignore it. Still, she refused to give that feeling any attention. After all, she was right. People like that family didn't belong in a place like the Oasis Mall. It was better they learned that lesson early. With that thought, Samantha entered her favorite store, determined to forget the incident and enjoy the rest of her shopping day. The following Monday, Samantha returned to Oasis Mall for a meeting with the owners of the place. She walked through the main hallway, absorbed in her thoughts about business strategies, when a voice interrupted her. "Excuse me, ma'am." It was a young saleswoman. Her name tag identified her as Jessica. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" Samantha sighed, annoyed by the interruption. "Make it quick." Jessica hesitated, then spoke quickly. "It's about the family you met on Saturday. I saw what happened." "So what?" Samantha responded, impatient. "The younger girl, Emma, she has leukemia. It's terminal." The words hit Samantha like a punch to the gut. She was momentarily speechless. Jessica continued, her voice trembling. Her wish was to visit the mall. She really wanted that princess dress. But the family doesn't even have money for treatment, let alone for— Enough, Samantha interrupted harshly. That's none of my business. But as she walked away, Jessica's words echoed in her mind. Leukemia. Terminal. A dying child. Samantha entered the nearest restroom, locking herself in a stall. Her heart was racing. Suddenly, a flood of memories overwhelmed her. She saw herself as a child again, sitting beside her mother's hospital bed. The smell of antiseptic, the constant hum of the machines. Her mother, thin and pale, battling cancer they couldn't afford to treat properly. Sammy, her mother had said, be strong, but never forget to be kind. Samantha shook her head, trying to push the memories away. She was different now, strong, successful. She didn't owe anyone anything. Leaving the restroom, she tried to focus on the upcoming meeting. But the image of Emma, staring at the princess dress, kept coming back. It's not my fault, Samantha muttered to herself. I didn't know. But a voice in her mind answered, if you had known, would you have acted differently? During the meeting, Samantha struggled to focus. Her answers were short, her mind distant. The owners exchanged confused glances, not used to seeing the ruthless Samantha Parker so distracted. After the meeting, Samantha returned to her office. She sat at her desk, staring out the window at the city below. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Be kind, Sammy. I am kind, Samantha said out loud to the empty office. I donate to charities. I create jobs. But she knew it wasn't true. Her donations were only for tax deductions. The jobs she created were often at the expense of small businesses she destroyed. Samantha picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She could easily find out more about that family. It's not my responsibility, she murmured, placing the phone back on the desk. But the guilt lingered, an uncomfortable feeling she couldn't shake. Samantha found herself replaying the moment at the mall, seeing the hurt on the girl's face, the quiet dignity of her parents in the face of her cruelty. I'm a businesswoman, Samantha told herself. I can't afford to be sentimental. But the words felt hollow, even to her own ears. For the first time in years, Samantha felt doubt. Doubt about who she was, about the choices she had made. The rest of the day passed strangely. Samantha went home early, unable to focus on work. In her luxurious apartment, she poured herself a drink, trying to calm her restless thoughts. Looking out at the city from her penthouse window, Samantha wondered, when had she become the person her mother had warned her never to be? When had success become more important than compassion? The painful truth Samantha was being forced to face was that in her quest for security and power, she had become exactly the type of person she once despised. And now, confronted with the reality of a dying child, a child she had publicly humiliated, Samantha found herself at a crossroads. Would she continue being the cold and ruthless woman she had become? Or risk cracking the armor she had so carefully built? As night fell over Springdale, Samantha remained awake, battling an internal struggle she wasn't used to fighting. The truth about that humble family and her own cruelty had planted a seed of doubt she couldn't ignore. Samantha woke up the next morning determined to find the Johnson family. She didn't know exactly what she would do when she found them, but she felt an urgent need to do something, anything. In her office, Samantha called Jennifer, her assistant. I need you to find information about a family, last name Johnson. They have 2 daughters, the youngest is Emma, and she has leukemia. Samantha had gathered this information with little difficulty from a mall employee who knew the family. Jennifer looked surprised by the unusual request but nodded. "Yes, Miss Parker, I'll start right away." Samantha spent the next few hours restless, unable to concentrate on her work. When Jennifer returned, her face was serious. "I found some information, but it wasn't easy," Jennifer said. "It seems like the community is protecting the family. No one wants to talk." Samantha frowned. "What do you mean, protecting?" Jennifer hesitated. "Well, when I mentioned your name, people became hostile. Apparently, the incident at the mall has spread." Samantha felt a pang of shame but quickly pushed it aside. "Did you find anything useful?" "Only that the girl, Emma, is at Springdale Children's Hospital," Jennifer replied. "But I couldn't get more details." Samantha nodded and dismissed Jennifer. She picked up the phone and called the hospital, using her name and influence to try to get information. But she ran into a wall of silence. "I'm sorry, Miss Parker," the receptionist said, "but we cannot disclose information about patients." Frustrated, Samantha decided to go to the hospital in person. On the way, she stopped at a flower shop and bought the biggest and most expensive bouquet she could find. At the hospital, Samantha walked up to the front desk, flowers in hand. "I'm here to visit Emma Johnson," she said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist looked at her suspiciously. "I'm sorry, but the Johnson family specifically requested no visits from strangers," Samantha insisted, her voice rising. "Look, I just want to help. I know I made a mistake, but—" "Miss Parker," a firm voice interrupted. Samantha turned and saw a middle-aged man in a doctor's coat. "I'm Dr. Thompson. Could we talk privately?" In Dr. Thompson's office, Samantha tried to explain. "Doctor, I know I seem like the last person who should be here, but—" The doctor cut her off. "Miss Parker, I know your reputation, and I've heard about the incident at the mall. The Johnson family is going through a very difficult time. They don't need any more stress." Samantha felt the weight of her past actions like never before. "I understand. But isn't there anything I can do to help?" "Anything?" Dr. Thompson studied her for a moment. "If you really want to help, there's a donation fund for Emma's treatment. But I should warn you, the community has been incredibly supportive. People from all over town are coming together to help the Johnsons." Samantha was surprised. "The whole town?" The doctor nodded. "It's amazing to see. Bake sales, car washes, even kids selling lemonade. Everyone wants to do their part." Samantha felt a pang of something she didn't immediately recognize. Jealousy? Regret? The idea of an entire community coming together for one family was something she had never experienced. I'd like to make a donation," Samantha finally said. "A large donation." Dr. Thompson seemed skeptical. "Miss Parker, money is helpful, of course. But what this family really needs is support, compassion. Things that, frankly, don't seem to be your strong suit." The words hit Samantha like a slap. She left the hospital feeling defeated and more alone than ever. Back at her office, Samantha made a large transfer to Emma's donation account. But the gesture didn't bring the relief she had hoped for. Looking out the window at the city below, Samantha realized that, for the first time in her adult life, her money and influence weren't enough. She had built walls so high around herself that now she couldn't reach the people she genuinely wanted to help. That family was so poor, yet they had so many people helping and cheering for them. And she, so rich and powerful, was alone and hated. That night, in her silent penthouse, Samantha reflected on the community that had rallied around the Johnsons. Ordinary people, many probably struggling with their own difficulties, still found the strength to help others. Samantha realized that her search for redemption would be harder than she had imagined. It wasn't just about making a donation or a grand gesture. It was about fundamentally changing who she was and how she connected with the world. As the night wore on, Samantha wondered if she would be able to make that change. And more importantly, if it wasn't too late to even try. Determined to do more than just make an anonymous donation, Samantha decided to try to make direct contact with the Johnsons. She found out that Mark, Emma's father, worked as a mechanic at a local shop. The next morning, Samantha drove her luxury car to the shop. The contrast between her vehicle and the simple cars around her was striking. She took a deep breath and walked in. Mark was bent over the engine of an old car. When he saw Samantha, his face hardened. "What are you doing here?" Samantha tried to keep her composure. "Mr. Johnson, I came to apologize and offer help." Mark dropped the tool he was holding with a loud clank. "Help? After what you did?" "I know I was wrong," Samantha began. "But if you give me a chance—" "A chance?" Mark interrupted, his voice rising. "You humiliated my family. You made my daughter cry. And now you want a chance?" Other mechanics began to gather around, glaring at Samantha with hostility. She felt cornered, a new and uncomfortable feeling. "Please," Samantha tried again. "I want to do whatever it takes to help Emma." Mark shook his head. "We don't want anything from you. Get out of here." Samantha left the shop, feeling defeated. But she wasn't ready to give up. Her next stop was the hospital, where she hoped to find Sarah, Emma's mother. At the hospital, Samantha saw Sarah coming out of Emma's room. "Mrs. Johnson," Samantha called. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Sarah glared at her, her tired eyes filling with anger. "You've got some nerve coming here." "I know what I did was terrible," Samantha said, "but I'm trying to make things right." "Make things right?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "You think you can fix my daughter's broken heart with your money?" Samantha felt herself shrink under Sarah's gaze. "I just want to help Emma. Please tell me what I can do." Sarah stepped closer, her voice low and intense. "You want to help? Leave us alone. Stay away from my family." Frustrated and hurt, Samantha was about to leave when she saw Lily, Emma's older sister, approaching. For a moment, Samantha saw a glimmer of hope for redemption. "Lily," Samantha called out, "can I talk to you?" Lily stopped, looking from Samantha to her mother. Sarah reluctantly nodded and stepped away. "What do you want?" Lily asked, her voice full of distrust. Samantha tried to smile. "I wanted to apologize for what happened at the mall, and to ask if there's anything I can do to help your sister." Lily studied her for a moment. "Do you really want to help, or do you just want to feel better about yourself?" The question hit Samantha like a punch. She hesitated, unsure how to answer. Lily continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "You have no idea what you did to us. Emma keeps asking why that pretty lady was so mean to us. She thinks she did something wrong." Samantha felt unexpected tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "Of course, you didn't know," Lily shot back. "You didn't even care to find out. People like you never do." With that, Lily turned and walked away, leaving Samantha alone in the hospital hallway. Samantha returned to her car, feeling utterly defeated. She started the engine, ready to drive away and never come back. Her pride was wounded, her confidence shaken. Maybe it was better to give up. But just as she was about to leave the parking lot, Samantha saw a family walking into the hospital. The parents were holding hands with a small child, all of them wearing expressions of worry and love. In that moment, Samantha remembered her own childhood, her sick mother, the fear and loneliness she felt. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel true empathy. With trembling hands, Samantha turned off the car. She couldn't give up. Not now. No matter how hard it was, she would find a way to help Emma and her family. Samantha picked up her phone and called Jennifer. "I need you to make a list of all the charities and support groups for children with cancer in Springdale," she said, "and set up a meeting with my lawyer. We've got work to do." While Samantha focused her efforts on helping the Johnson family, her empire began to crumble around her. It all started with a series of investigative articles published in the local newspaper of Springdale. The first article detailed Samantha's past, her poor childhood, and meteoric rise in the business world. Initially, it seemed like a typical success story, but then the tone shifted. Sources close to Ms. Parker reveal a pattern of questionable business practices, the article stated. From contract manipulation to the intimidation of smaller competitors, Samantha read the article with growing horror. Many of the accusations were true, but seeing them printed in black and white was shocking. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investors, business partners, all wanting explanations. Samantha tried to calm things down, but she felt like she was losing control of the situation. The next morning, another article was published. This one focused on a development project Samantha had completed the previous year. The article claimed that she had bribed public officials to approve the project, bypassing environmental regulations. The effects were immediate. The stock market opened, and Samantha's company's shares plummeted. Investors started pulling their support, fearing association with the scandal. Samantha called an emergency meeting with her legal team. "We need to stop this," she said, her voice tense. "Issue a statement denying all accusations." But it was too late. The story had taken on a life of its own. More people started coming forward with allegations against Samantha. A former employee spoke of workplace harassment. A small business owner shared how Samantha had ruined his business through predatory tactics. Each new story added another crack to Samantha's carefully constructed facade. Amid the chaos, Samantha received an unexpected call. It was David, her former partner from the early days of her career. "Samantha," David's voice sounded weary over the phone. "I think we need to talk." They met at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. David looked older than Samantha remembered, with deep wrinkles around his eyes. "Why are you doing this, David?" Samantha asked, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "Why now?" David looked at her with a sympathetic expression. "I didn't start this, Samantha. But when the reporters came to me, I realized it was time for the truth to come out." "What truth?" Samantha shot back. "We built that company together." "Yes, we did," David agreed. "Until you betrayed me and pushed me out." "I did what I had to do to survive," Samantha said. But the words felt hollow even to her. David shook his head. "No, Samantha. You did what you wanted to do to win. There's a difference." As David spoke, Samantha found herself reliving every decision she had made over the years. Every ethical shortcut, every person she had stepped on to reach the top. Back at her office, Samantha faced more bad news. Several major contracts had been canceled. The board of directors was demanding her resignation. Sitting in her leather chair, looking out over the city she once thought she owned, Samantha felt more alone than ever. All her success, all her wealth, suddenly felt empty and meaningless. Her phone rang. It was Jennifer. "Ms. Parker, what should I tell the press? They're demanding a comment." Samantha was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, "Tell them I'll make a statement tomorrow. And Jennifer, thank you for everything." Hanging up the phone, Samantha looked out the window one more time. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the skyscrapers. She thought of Emma, fighting cancer in the hospital. She thought of all the people she had hurt over the years in her relentless pursuit of success. For the first time, Samantha allowed herself to feel the full weight of her actions. And with that weight came a realization. Her empire might be crumbling. But perhaps, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Something better. With that thought in mind, Samantha began to plan her next move. Not to save her empire, but to try and fix at least some of the damage she had caused along the way. In the weeks following the downfall of her empire, Samantha spent most of her time at the hospital, quietly observing the Johnson family. She hadn't managed to get close to them yet, but she felt the need to be there, even from a distance. One day, while sitting on a bench in the hallway, Samantha saw Mark and Sarah Johnson enter Emma's room. Through the slightly open door, she watched them gather around the girl's bed. Mark took Emma's hand, while Sarah gently stroked her daughter's thinning hair. Then, to Samantha's surprise, they bowed their heads and began to pray. Samantha couldn't hear the exact words, but she could see the intensity on their faces, the faith clear in every gesture. It was something so foreign to her own experience that she was mesmerized. Suddenly, the machines in Emma's room began beeping frantically. Doctors and nurses rushed in, pushing Mark and Sarah aside. "What's happening?" Sarah shouted, her voice filled with panic. A doctor quickly responded as he shut the door. "Emma is having a reaction to the new treatment. We're doing everything we can." Samantha watched in horror as Mark held Sarah, both of them crying openly in the hallway. The scene hit her harder than she had expected. Without thinking, she stood up and approached the couple. Is there anything I can do?" Samantha asked hesitantly. Mark and Sarah looked at her, surprised by her presence. For a moment, Samantha feared they would reject her again. But then Sarah spoke, her voice trembling. "Pray. If you believe in anything, pray for our Emma." Samantha froze. She didn't know how to pray. She had never been a religious or spiritual person, but seeing the desperation in Sarah's eyes, she knew she had to try. Not knowing where to go, Samantha found herself walking toward the hospital chapel. It was a small, simple place with a few rows of benches and a cross on the front wall. Sitting on one of the benches, Samantha felt completely lost. What was she supposed to do? How should she start? She looked down at her hands and noticed they were trembling. I don't know how to do this," Samantha whispered into the empty space. "I don't even know if anyone's listening. But if you are, please help Emma." The words came out hesitantly at first, but soon Samantha found herself saying more. "She doesn't deserve this. She's just a child. If anyone deserves to suffer, it's me. I've done terrible things. I've hurt people. But Emma, she's innocent." Tears began to roll down Samantha's face, catching her by surprise. She couldn't remember the last time she had cried. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking with sobs. "Give Emma a chance. Let her live. I'll do anything. I'll change. Just don't let her die." Samantha didn't know how long she stayed in the chapel, crying and pleading. When she finally left, she felt drained but strangely lighter. Back in the hallway, she saw Mark and Sarah talking to a doctor. Their faces, once tense with worry, now showed relief. "She's stabilized," Samantha heard the doctor say. "We can't explain it, but she's responding well now. A miracle." Samantha stood there stunned. Could it be? Had her desperate prayer really made a difference? Sarah noticed Samantha and walked over to her. "Emma's condition has improved," she said, a small smile on her tired face. "Thank you for being here." Samantha just nodded, unable to find the words. She watched as Mark and Sarah returned to Emma's room, leaving her alone with her swirling thoughts. For the first time in her life, Samantha found herself considering the possibility of something bigger than herself. The idea of faith, of a power beyond her understanding, was both terrifying and comforting. As she walked out of the hospital that night, Samantha felt changed. She didn't fully understand what had happened in the chapel or if her prayer had truly made a difference, but she knew that something inside her had shifted. In the days following Emma's crisis, Samantha continued visiting the hospital regularly. Although Mark and Sarah still kept their distance, they no longer pushed her away. It was during one of these visits that Samantha noticed Lily, sitting alone in the waiting room, struggling with some books. Hesitant, Samantha approached. "Hi, Lily. Is everything okay?" Lily looked up, surprised. "Oh, hi. I'm just trying to do my homework. It's hard to focus here." Samantha saw an opportunity. "Can I help?" "What subject is it?" "Math," Lily replied with a grimace. "I hate fractions." "Well, as it happens, I was really good at math in school," Samantha said, sitting down next to Lily. "Want me to explain?" To her surprise, Lily agreed. Over the next few hours, Samantha helped Lily with her assignments, patiently explaining the concepts the girl found difficult. As they worked, Lily began to open up. "You know, you're not as bad as I thought," she said, surprising Samantha. Thank you, Lily," Samantha replied, feeling a wave of emotion she hadn't expected. "I'm trying to be better." Lily was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "Emma asks about you sometimes. She wants to know why the pretty lady is always around but never comes in to say hi." Samantha felt a lump in her throat. "I want to say hi, Lily, but I'm not sure if your parents would approve. Maybe if you keep being nice like this, they'll change their minds," Lily suggested. Before Samantha could respond, a familiar voice interrupted her. "Samantha Parker, what a surprise to see you here." Samantha turned and saw Robert, a former business colleague. His face was hard, his eyes cold. "Robert," Samantha said, standing up, "can we talk in private?" They moved away from Lily, who watched them curiously. "What do you want, Robert?" Samantha asked, tense. "I just wanted to see it with my own eyes," Robert replied. The great Samantha Parker, reduced to doing charity in a hospital. How the mighty have fallen. "Things have changed, Robert," Samantha said, keeping her voice low. "I've changed." Robert laughed without humor. "Changed? After ruining so many lives? After betraying me and stealing that Miller Corp contract?" Samantha felt the weight of her past actions. "I know I've done wrong, Robert. I'm trying to make things right." "Make things right?" Robert interrupted. "Some things can't be made right, Samantha. Remember that." As Robert walked away, Samantha saw Lily watching her, her eyes full of questions. That night, in her now almost empty apartment, she had been forced to sell much of her property to pay off debts and settlements. Samantha reflected on her conversation with Robert. She knew she had a long road ahead to repair the damage she had caused. The next day, Samantha returned to the hospital, determined to keep helping Lily. To her surprise, the girl was waiting for her. "Hi," Lily said. I wanted to tell you something." Samantha sat down, curious. "What is it, Lily?" Lily took a deep breath. "It's about Emma. She has this dream, you know? To be a princess for a day. Wear a pretty dress. Have a crown. That kind of thing." Samantha felt her heart ache, remembering the day at the mall. "Oh, Lily, I know it's silly," Lily continued. "But with everything that's happening, I just wish I could make that dream come true for her, you know?" Samantha was silent for a moment, absorbing Lily's words. Then an idea began to form in her mind. "It's not silly, Lily," Samantha said softly. "In fact, I think it's a wonderful idea." Lily looked at her, surprised. "Really?" Samantha nodded, feeling a determination she hadn't felt in weeks. "Yes, really. And you know what? I think we can make it happen. Lily's eyes widened. How? Leave it to me, Samantha said, a small smile forming on her lips. I'll need your help, of course. And we'll have to talk to your parents. But I think we can do something very special for Emma. For the first time since they met, Lily smiled genuinely at Samantha. Thank you, she said quietly. The next day began with devastating news for the Johnson family. Dr. Thompson gathered Mark, Sarah, and Lily to inform them that Emma urgently needed a bone marrow transplant. The current treatment isn't working as well as we'd hoped, the doctor explained. A transplant is our best option now. Samantha, who was in the hallway, overheard the news. Her heart sank. She knew how difficult it could be to find a compatible donor. As the Johnson family processed the news, Samantha received an unexpected phone call. It was her lawyer, James. Samantha, we have an opportunity, James said excitedly. Apex Corp is willing to buy your last commercial property. It's a generous offer. It could save what's left of your empire. Samantha hesitated. It was a chance to regain part of what she had lost. But something didn't sit right with her. When do they need an answer? She asked. This afternoon, James replied. They want to close the deal quickly. At that moment, Samantha heard commotion in Emma's room. The machines were beeping and doctors were rushing in to attend to the girl. James, I'll have to call you back, Samantha said, hanging up quickly. She ran to Emma's room where she found the Johnson family in a panic. Emma was having a crisis, and the doctors were struggling to stabilize her. Samantha stood beside Lily, who was shaking uncontrollably. Without thinking, she hugged the girl, offering silent comfort. Hours passed. Emma was stabilized, but the incident only reinforced the urgency of the transplant. Mark and Sarah were devastated to find out they weren't compatible as donors. Samantha watched the family, feeling helpless. Then an idea came to her. What if I got tested? She suddenly asked. All eyes turned to her. Mark was the first to speak. You do that? Samantha nodded. Yes, I would. I might not be compatible, but it's worth a try, isn't it? Sarah, with tears in her eyes, approached Samantha. Why? After everything? Because it's the right thing to do, Samantha simply replied. Dr. Thompson quickly arranged for the tests. While waiting for the results, Samantha received another call from James. Samantha, Apex is getting impatient. We need an answer now. Samantha looked at the Johnson family, gathered around Emma's bed. She thought about the empire she had built, the wealth she had accumulated. And then she thought about little Emma, fighting for her life. Tell them I'm sorry, James, Samantha replied. But I have something more important to take care of right now. She hung up the phone, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in her life, Samantha was putting someone else's needs above her own financial interests. Hours later, Dr. Thompson returned with the results. I'm sorry, Samantha, he said. You're not a match. Samantha felt a wave of disappointment. She had really hoped she could help directly. But before she could respond, Sarah approached her. Samantha, she said, her voice choked with emotion. What you did, offering to do that. We don't have words to thank you. Mark joined her, extending his hand to Samantha. We misjudged you, he admitted. You've truly changed. Lily, standing beside Emma's bed, smiled at Samantha. See? I told you they'd change their minds. Samantha felt tears welling up in her eyes. She wasn't a match for the bone marrow, but somehow her gesture had healed a different wound, the one between her and the Johnsons. I want to help, Samantha said, looking at each family member. In any way I can. We can organize large-scale tests, search for a compatible donor. I have contacts. I can mobilize resources." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, then nodded. "We would appreciate that, Samantha," Mark said. A few days later, Emma's surgery day finally arrived. After weeks of intensive searching, a compatible donor was found thanks to the efforts of Samantha and the local community. The atmosphere at the hospital was tense as Emma was prepared for the transplant. "How is she?" Samantha asked softly. "Scared but strong," Sarah replied. "She asked for you." Samantha felt a lump in her throat. "Can I see her before the surgery?" Mark nodded, guiding Samantha to Emma's room. The girl looked so small in the hospital bed, but her eyes lit up when she saw Samantha. "You came," Emma smiled weakly. "Of course I did," Samantha replied, holding Emma's hand. "You're going to do great, sweetheart. Be strong." Soon after, the nurses came to take Emma for surgery. The Johnson family and Samantha watched, hearts heavy, as the little girl was wheeled away. The following hours were agonizing. Samantha tried to comfort the family, but she herself felt on the verge of panic. In a moment of quiet, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her lawyer. "I'm sorry, Samantha. The bankruptcy has been declared. We've lost everything." Samantha stared at the screen, feeling a strange calm. Her empire had completely collapsed, but at that moment, it seemed insignificant compared to Emma's fight. Suddenly, Dr. Thompson appeared in the hallway, his face serious. "We have a complication," he announced. "Emma's body is rejecting the transplant. We're doing everything we can, but the situation is critical." The world seemed to crumble. Sarah collapsed in tears into Mark's arms, while Lily sobbed quietly. A wave of despair threatened to swallow Samantha. Then, something unexpected happened. Samantha found herself stepping forward, her voice surprisingly steady. "Let's pray," she said. I don't really know how to do this," Samantha admitted. "But Emma needs all the help we can give her. So, let's try together?" Mark reached out. Sarah and Lily joined in, forming a circle with Samantha. With a trembling voice, Samantha began, "God, or whoever is listening, please help Emma. She's so young, so full of life. Don't take her yet. Give us the strength to face this, whatever the outcome may be." The words flowed, surprising even Samantha herself. She spoke of hope, love, and second chances. When she finished, tears were in her eyes and in the eyes of the Johnsons. The hours dragged on. Samantha received more calls and messages about her financial situation, but she ignored them. Nothing mattered except Emma's fight. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Thompson reappeared. Everyone stood up, tense, waiting for the news. "Emma survived the surgery," he announced, a small smile on his tired face. A collective sigh of relief filled the hallway. Sarah hugged Mark, both crying tears of joy. Lily jumped up, laughing and crying at the same time. Samantha felt her legs weaken, and she leaned against the wall, silent tears streaming down her face. Dr. Thompson continued, "I won't lie. The road ahead is still uncertain. Recovery will be long and difficult. But Emma showed incredible strength today. She's a true fighter." Samantha looked at the Johnsons, seeing hope in their faces for the first time in weeks. At that moment, she truly understood what it meant to have faith. "Can we see her?" Sarah asked. "Soon," Dr. Thompson replied. "She's in recovery now. As soon as she's transferred to her room, you'll be able to go in." As they waited, Samantha stepped aside, needing a moment to process everything. Her phone buzzed again, another update about her financial ruin. But looking at the Johnson family, huddled together, crying tears of relief, Samantha realized she had gained something far more valuable than any material wealth. She had found an inner strength she didn't know she possessed, an ability to connect with others on a deeper level. And perhaps, most surprisingly, she had discovered a faith not necessarily in a specific God, but in human kindness, in the resilience of the spirit. In the weeks following Emma's surgery, a cautious sense of hope lingered over the hospital. The little girl was showing slow but steady signs of recovery. Her body was accepting the transplant, and each day she seemed just a little bit stronger. Samantha remained a constant presence, splitting her time between the hospital and trying to reorganize her own life. With her financial empire in ruins, she was forced to make drastic changes. One sunny morning, Samantha entered her luxurious penthouse for the last time. She looked around at the expensive furniture and priceless artwork that once meant so much to her. Now, everything felt empty and meaningless. "Everything is ready, Ms. Parker," the real estate agent said. "The new owners will be moving in tomorrow." Samantha nodded, picking up a small suitcase with her personal belongings. "Thank you. You can finalize the sale." She left the building and got into a taxi, heading to her new home, a modest apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. It was quite a change, but Samantha was surprised to realize that she didn't miss the luxury at all. At the hospital, Emma was having an especially good day. When Samantha arrived, she found the girl sitting up in bed, coloring a picture. "Look, Samantha!" Emma exclaimed, holding up her drawing. "It's you, me, and my family at the park." Samantha smiled, feeling a wave of emotion. "It's beautiful, Emma, and when you get better, we'll take that trip for real, okay?" That afternoon, while Samantha was having coffee in the hospital's cafeteria, she was approached by a familiar figure, Michael Roth, one of her former business partners. "Samantha," Michael greeted her, sitting down across from her. "I heard about your current situation." Samantha straightened up, feeling defensive. "What do you want, Michael?" "To offer you an opportunity," he said with a smile. "I'm starting a new venture. With your experience and contacts, we could do something really big. What do you say? A chance to get back to the top?" For a moment, Samantha hesitated. The offer was tempting. Returning to the world she knew so well, reclaiming the power and prestige she had lost. But then she thought of Emma, the Johnsons, and everything she had learned over the past few weeks. "Thank you, Michael," Samantha finally said, "but I'll have to pass. I have other plans now." Michael seemed surprised. "Are you sure? This might be your only chance to." "I'm sure," Samantha interrupted with a serene smile. "Good luck with your venture." As Michael walked away, Samantha felt a sense of peace she had never experienced before. She knew she had made the right choice. That evening, in her new, simple apartment, Samantha began working on an idea that had been growing in her mind for days. She opened her laptop and started outlining plans for a foundation, an organization dedicated to helping children with serious illnesses and their families. As she worked, Samantha reflected on how much her life had changed. Just a few months ago, she was at the top of the business world, obsessed with power and wealth. Now, here she was, living in a modest apartment, planning a non-profit organization. The most surprising thing was that she felt happier and more fulfilled than she ever had before. The next day, Samantha shared her plans with the Johnsons. "I'd like to create this foundation in Emma's name," she explained, "to help other families going through what you've been through." Sarah hugged Samantha, tears in her eyes. "This is wonderful, Samantha. Emma will be so happy when she finds out." Mark shook Samantha's hand firmly. "You've really changed our lives, you know, not just by helping Emma, but by showing us that people can change, that they can be better. Lily, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "You know what this means, don't you? You've really become a princess, Samantha." Samantha looked at the girl, puzzled. "What do you mean, Lily?" "Well, in stories, princesses always help people, right? They're kind and they do good things. That's what you're doing now." Lily's words struck Samantha deeply. She had never thought of it that way, but the girl was right. She had found a new kind of nobility, not through wealth or status, but through compassion and service. In the weeks that followed, Samantha worked tirelessly to establish the foundation. She used her business knowledge for a completely new purpose, connecting with doctors, social workers, and other charitable organizations. Every time she saw a smile on a sick child's face, every time she was able to ease a family's burden even just a little, Samantha felt a satisfaction that no financial success had ever given her. One day, while visiting Emma, who was continuing to improve each day, Samantha realized something important. She hadn't just helped heal Emma. Emma and the Johnsons had healed something inside her too. Looking toward the future, Samantha knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Establishing the foundation would be a challenge, and she was still learning how to navigate her simpler new life. But for the first time, she was truly excited about what was to come. Samantha Parker, the former Ice Queen, had been reborn. And this new chapter of her life promised to be the most rewarding of all.